Thank you, everyone. Good afternoon. Today is an exciting day for Sporting Kansas City. As a member of Sporting Kansas City's ownership group, I'm here to announce two important changes to our soccer organization's leadership structure. First, Peter Vermes, who spent the last 17 years as our sporting director and manager, will continue as MLS's longest tenured manager, and now, from today forward, will also serve as our chief soccer officer and the executive head of our sporting player enterprise. In addition, today I would like to introduce Gavin Wilkinson as Sporting KC's new sporting director. I'd like to take a few minutes to summarize how we arrived to where we are today. Several times a year, we, as ownership, hold regular strategic meetings and planning sessions with Sporting KC's executive teams. Sometimes these are broad and expansive in scope, combining both the business organization leadership with the executive leaders of our soccer technical side as we consider the strategic future and direction of our future enterprise. At other times, we conduct very targeted group sessions where the focus is on driving long-term, high-performance results. This past August, as Sporting was fighting to make the playoffs and continue our season's impressive turnaround on the field, we held a very targeted off-site meeting of our technical group executives. That session focused on the technical organization structure and its ability to deliver consistently on the ownership's vision to be a perennial winner, delivering consistent, long-term, top-of-the-table results. In these meetings, we look back at the factors that have contributed to the team's impressive run of winning seasons and year-to-year playoff appearances. We revisited our commitment to our style of play and our approach to roster composition and our player assets. We also considered the growth of our league, the league's increased investment and emphasis on developing young players, and the huge commitment of capital being made by some teams to attract world-class players. All factors that contribute to the significant competitive evolution of Major League Soccer. In our discussions, it became clear that to continue our on-field success and winning trophies, we need to address the challenge of growing our pipeline of young, high-potential soccer talent while also identifying and acquiring those key individual players that can excel as leaders on the field in the near term. We recognize that emphasizing and balancing those priorities would require us to take a fresh approach and adjust the structure of our technical organization. It was also evident that we needed to change the scope of certain key executive roles, and we should look to expand our executive technical leadership to meet the demands of MLS. Specifically, over the years, Peter has had a strong record of developing a very capable player personnel management team. During the 2015 to 2017 Open Cup era, we all recall and appreciate the contributions of Mike Jacobs as technical director, Megan Cameron as assistant director of player personnel, and the sustained presence of Brian Bliss as Sporting KC's director of player personnel. Clubs around the league have also recognized the strength of Peter's management team. Mike Jacobs was recruited away to become the general manager at the expansion team Nashville SC, and Megan Cameron took a promotion to become the director of player personnel at the rapidly developing Inter Miami. With those departures, Brian Bliss stepped into the dual roles of technical director and VP of player personnel, alongside Peter as sporting director and the senior team manager. Through our analysis and working closely and mutually with Peter, we agreed that the rapid growth of our league, the pressures of a long season with multiple competitions, and the increased importance of player development would create new demands on even Peter's impressive bandwidth. We determined that the future we would need to bifurcate Peter's role into separate coaching and player development areas of emphasis. It's evident, too, that we needed to add significant horsepower to our player personnel operation to manage the player pipeline, manage the complexities of player economics or the capology, economic aspects of player relationships. Finally, we have been consistent in our intent to have Peter continue as the overall leader of our technical organization. After our intense playoff run in early November, we engaged Nolan Partners, one of the world's leading sports executive recruiting firms, to assist in a global executive search. Nolan's mandate was to introduce us to a broad, diverse, well-credentialed list of high-performance sports executives for our consideration. We started with a list of 14 candidates from the U.S. and abroad, candidates that we reviewed and interviewed over a number of weeks that we have now successfully narrowed to the one who sits here today as our new sporting director, Gavin Wilkinson. Before I turn this over to Gavin and Peter, I want to openly address an obvious issue that has been an important part of this process. Gavin's name is associated with a concerning situation stemming from his relationship with Portland's NWSL team, the Portland Thorns. Momentarily, Gavin will speak directly to that situation, and he will welcome your interest and questions regarding his involvement and experiences. Importantly, I want you to know that Sporting's ownership group took this incredibly seriously. Through comprehensive, rigorous reviews by Nolan Partners and our Sporting Kansas City review and diligence of both private and public investigative reports, we have concluded that in Portland, there were acknowledged lapses in judgment and that certain aspects of the situation should have been handled much differently. We also concluded that, ultimately, Gavin is a strong, principled individual worthy of a second chance that can and will represent the elevated standards and expectations of Sporting Kansas City well into the future. Over his 15 years of leading soccer operations at the Portland Timbers, Gavin has an incredible, highly visible track record of driving soccer performance and results. I'm excited that he and Peter, each with their own portfolios of strength and expertise, will complement each other to position Sporting Kansas City for continued long-term success. At this time, I'll turn it over to Gavin for his remarks, followed by Peter. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and I thank you for the introduction, Mike, and for this opportunity. Also, I appreciate you taking time out of your day today, and look forward to the questions. For me, I'd like to start by expressing my sincere gratitude to the ownership group and to Peter for their belief in me as a person and as a professional. And it would be remiss if I didn't mention my family, Heather Keenan and Brooke, who have been incredible, as always, in their unwavering commitment and support to make this move a reality. Over the last 15 months, looking at the game from the outside and pretty much observing MLS for the first time without pressure associated with every single game, I was presented with numerous opportunities and none of them felt right. And I think that time away from the game was important for me as a person, as a human being. And there was a personal journey that I was on that encompassed a lot of self-reflection, growth, and improvement. So with that said, and looking at that and having stepped away and now, looking at it through a lens where you're not involved on the day-to-day, I would like to take this moment to apologize for the unintended consequences and to the individuals who were impacted. I should have done more in my previous role to protect and empower female athletes and not hide behind legal advice. I should have been able to stand on my own 2 feet, question the process, find out more information, find out more about the situation that occurred, and made a more informed decision. I should have spoken up to prevent the hiring of the coach involved, and, as I said, a deeper dive and looking at that through the lens, having stepped away, I owe those involved a sincere apology. In looking at that and having reflected, I do believe I've grown. I think what I generally always try to do is what's right for the human being, and judgment where I simply moved on, and I regret that. And looking at Sporting KC and looking at this role, it's first of all, it's an honor. This is a very respected club. It's one of the most storied clubs in MLS, and as I said, it's an honor to be a part of this club. Normally when this role is hired, it's because the club is broken, or it's because they're changing roles, or they're looking to fix a problem. That is definitely not the case here. Part of the reason I wanted to desperately to be a part of this club is the winning culture, the tremendous staff, the leadership, and for me, those were key elements in making this decision. And to be fair, it feels right. It feels right for me personally, and it feels right for the family. So some of the things I'm looking forward to is obviously the vertical integration between the first team, second team, and the academy, and it's strengthening ties with former players, as well as roster development. So it's been a lot happening in the last couple of days, trying to hit the ground running, going with the team to pre-season, and learning as much as possible, and drinking from a fire hose over the next 30 to 60 days. So most importantly, I am looking forward to winning and creating more winning moments, and working with Peter and the staff. So thank you.
I'll be quick, and then you guys can ask your questions. I'm very excited. As Mike said, I've been doing a job for 17 years. I can tell you that I'm looking forward to having the chance to really just focus on the team and soccer. So I'm actually really excited. Get a little bit of my life back. I'm sure my wife will be happy with that. And I think the great thing is that we have, as Gavin said, I think we have a lot of really good pieces in place. I think bringing him with his knowledge, expertise, you put that with Brian Bliss, and the rest of our staff on the technical side, I think it's going to make us that much better. So I'm excited about that. And like I said, I can stay focused on the soccer, which is what I'm really passionate about doing. So with that, questions?
Just in light of what we've been speaking about, and in terms of what Mike spoke about in terms of the vetting process, I mean, to what degree was it a point of, how did you weigh the Yates Report and the dismissal in Portland, and just on a personal basis, how did that play into your vetting?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. I think from our perspective, and as Mike stated, the deep dive, the investigation that we took ourselves in our relationship with Nolan Partners, a recruiting company, I think that was very, very important to this. If that didn't happen, I don't think we would be sitting here today. But having gone through that and those findings, it obviously changed our perspective immensely.
Gavin, a couple things. You apologized here today. I'm wondering if you have apologized directly to the people involved in that.
I've met with numerous players, I've met with numerous staff, and what we know today is not what we knew previously. I think when the Athletic article came out, it was shocking, and there was a lot of new information that was never known prior, and that's what I mentioned, that should have done a deeper dive, should have found out more, should have asked more questions. I have tried to reach out to a player that I do owe an apology to, and that is simply, at that stage, I did not do enough. And in reflection, you know, it's easy to see that.
There was, you know, the Yates reports have that you're notified via email about the sexual harassment allegation, and then later recommend Riley for a job. I'm just wondering if you can take us through that timeline, what was going through your head at that moment.
And if you notice, a lot of that information is hearsay. That did not happen. I did not recommend Paul Riley, but I did not tell them not to hire him. And that's where I'm saying I should have done more at that moment.
In light of that, I guess, you know, I'd want to ask, because there's something else that I think you'd probably qualify into the same thing as far as hearsay. You know, there's the accusation that you had said that he was put in a bad position by the player. Is that an incident that took place?
That's completely incorrect. And again, that comes down through a hearsay comment to justify hiring.
You referenced that there were some things in the Yates report that maybe either you didn't know about or were different than you understood it. Are there some things that you want to point out, or things that came out in the report that you didn't see beforehand?
It was the Athletic article, actually, that I referenced. And what I would say to that is we were only aware of one incident, and one isolated incident, when we took action back in 2015. And that's why the coach was removed in 2015. Everything else outside of that was news to us. So it's very easy to separate those two.
What would you say you've learned over the last 15 months?
How long have you got? So for me, I've been in a leadership position for 20 years. And for me, I always took great pride in working with the individual, bringing the best out of the individual. And what I've learned through that process, and I'll go a little bit deeper, as part of the self-reflection process, I attended a course through Cornell University, just DEI, and started to look at it through other lenses and what I can look for and what I can act on and how to manage that. And for me, it was more awareness and being open and being more of a listener and taking action on that and taking a hard action. And I think, you know, I'm hoping some of those experiences, what I've gone through, have improved me as a leader and have improved me as a person. But it's mainly the reflection process, the accountability, obviously, standing up and holding my hand up, and now the knowledge and the understanding of taking action.
My last one, on the soccer side, you mentioned that this is a situation where you don't feel like you're taking over something that's needing to be fixed.
Correct.
So what do you think of the roster, and what do you know about the staff and all that so far?
This is a club that I've admired from the outside, and I've known Peter for many years. I've known Brian for many years, and so for me, there's a level of respect in how the club's been operated. The roster is a very competitive roster. I do think there's several positions that can be strengthened, and that is when we're talking about the depth in order to keep players performing at a high level and giving Peter good headaches in selection problems. So this is something where I'll be working with Peter closely and Brian over the next 30 days to see how can we impact the roster for the upcoming season and look to make changes where necessary and where appropriate. But as you saw last year, when things are clicking, and this is a very exciting competitive team, and it's fun to watch.
Just for Peter, just throughout the process of going through candidates, what about Gavin, aside from the success, what about Gavin stood out to you?
I have to say that I don't know, and you know, you guys know me. You know how I am. When we originally started going through this, I was like, we're going to get guys from all over the world. How's that going to look? And I thought, actually, when it's all over, it was pretty interesting to, I guess you get a chance to hear how other people are doing it, and you also get a chance to also understand that our league is very, very difficult in relationship to a lot of foreign situations because of our cap, the different player mechanisms that are out there. So it became very clear to me, I would say, that if a person did not have MLS experience, it was going to be very difficult. But obviously, Jake, you know, our CEO, and also our ownership group were involved in each one of those interviews as well. And I think for the people being interviewed, I think all the candidates, I think that was pretty impressive for them to see how it's very rarely that I think that owners are involved as much as I think on this situation they were, and I thought it was great. And so I would say for me, I just got solidified in my thoughts that you need MLS experience, number one. And then also it is very, very important for that person to be able to lead a room, to be able to have command. And then the final piece is you have to have one. I think somewhere along the line you had to have won something, and Gavin's done all those things, and I think that was very impressive.
And talking about all the investigations and whatnot, I mean, coming with all of those things that you have to look through, the investigations, going through this whole process, I mean, what about him, like, kind of stood out from other candidates when I would think other candidates don't have that process. You have to go through the extra hoops. Yeah.
It's actually a good question. I think at the end, you know, and I think Mike said it, I think once you get past all that stuff, right, and then you start to evaluate the people for, you know, the position, right, when you get past all of that and you're evaluating everything, I think what you start to also understand is there's, you know, people deserve a second chance, especially if they understand where they can improve and all those other things. And we saw that reflection in him. We saw that advancement just in who he is, and listening to him to talk about those things. But at the same time, when he brings his skill set to the job, and again, he said it earlier, we've worked with each other also, because every year, you know, the CSOs, the chief soccer officers, would get together, and we'd be in a lot of different committee meetings. So we've worked with each other in those environments. So I already knew him, and there was quite a few other candidates as well. Not to say he was the only one. There was others as well. That was very helpful for me. And I also think, I think what you're also looking at is you're looking at the dynamic between those individuals as well, meaning the two of us and how we relate to each other. And I think those are all things that were very positive.
Question for each. I'll start with you, Gavin. You've mentioned second chances a lot. What makes you think you deserve a second chance when it comes to the fan perspective, especially female fans of Sporting Kansas City, that you deserve a second chance?
So, interesting question. I'm a massive, this is where the lines get blurred and there's a convoluted message because the facts have not necessarily been reported. There's a narrative that I agree with. I should have done more. And then when you actually start to look, what did I do that was poor? And I didn't empower the female athlete. That is something that I think over the course of my career, it's something that I take great pride in the creation of the Thorns, in the creation of a team that's one of the best and where players wanted to play and they wanted to be a part of. This incident is obviously a concern, but it doesn't solidify who I am as a person and how I represent myself and how I go about things on a day-to-day basis. I think I'm a caring, compassionate human being, and I think I try and mix that with trying to win. There was an error of judgment, and I should have done more. On the flip side, there are many things that I have done and will continue to do to try and showcase who I am as a person. And I think being away from the game for 15 months, there's a lot of humility involved. And there's a lot of reflection, and there's a lot of time just spent saying why and what could I have done and what should I have done differently. And those are questions you have to answer to yourself. And for me, I think I've learned. I'm not perfect, but I've never met a perfect person. And you know, with me being in a very public spotlight, obviously everyone can have an opinion, everyone can pass judgment. And I'm just hopeful that fans will look at the facts and I will have plenty of opportunity with Town Hall and other initiatives to relate to folks and answer questions as well. And then it's up to them to make their mind up.
Peter, for you, you mentioned you've met Gavin multiple times. Just off the field and off the pitch, on the pitch, your just relation with him, and why do you think he's the guy for this job to let you kind of relieve some of your duties to focus more on what's going on tactically on the pitch?
When you're talking about the job that he did in Portland with the Timbers and going through the three different coaches that he had when he was there, in John Spencer, Caleb Porter, and Giovanni Savarese, they're all three different guys he had to work with. You know, I'll make a joke to all three of those guys. I think I'm a lot more collaborative than those three guys are. But I think it was for him. It was probably. At times, I can only imagine, like for any relationship between a coach and a general manager, sporting director, technical director, whatever you want to say, there's going to be tough moments. And I think that he, from afar, he's always managed those very, very well. I also think that he's also done a lot at that club with their roster over the years. It's always been very impressive. And so, again, I think adding his knowledge, his capabilities, and capacity to what we already have, as I said earlier, Brian Bliss has done a really good job. But we at the end of the day, needed more horsepower. We did. When you look around the league and you look at how many people other staffs have in their pipeline, it's different than ours. And so, you know, I also recognize that the league has gotten so much more competitive with the competitions that we have, Leagues Cup, and adding all that, you know, my focus has to be on the field as much as possible. And a lot of times I'm having to, you know, change my hats. When I walk into the office, I have to all of a sudden deal with a bunch of things that are more, you know, general manager, sporting director, what have you. They're more of that world. And it takes away from other things I have to do. And so, as I said earlier, I'm very excited that I'm going to get the opportunity to really focus on the team. And it's not just the first team either. It's also the second team. It's the academy, because that style of play and the advancement for those players is hugely important to our pro player pathway and what we're always trying to do with this club. And I want to make sure that I have the time and energy to focus on that.
Gavin, just something you said that stood out to me. You said you hope that fans look at all the facts of the situation. You know, we've read the Yates Report. From your perspective, I mean, what are the facts of the situation that you hope resonate with fans?
I think in looking at the biggest issues, the way I see it, is that I did not stop a coach we had limited information on in that time from getting another job. I think that's one of the issues. And for me, it's what we knew in 2015 and what we acted on in 15. And yes, I hold my hand up. Should have done more to prevent the future hiring. And that's the fact that I'm talking about. So just reiterating that. Everything else that's related to that, the hearsay, the comments that I endorse this coach, no. But I again take responsibility saying I should have stood up and said more instead of following legal advice. So
then, you know, why was the public and the private messaging around his dismissal from the Thorns specifically different? Why did those two things contrast?
In 2015?
Yes.
Under legal advice. And I think it was noted that there was a fear of litigation at the time.
So just to be more specific, like when you said you wanted to do more, looking back, you should have done more.
Yes.
You're put in the same situation again. What would your actions be today?
I think I stand on my own 2 feet and do what's right. And that is to prevent the future hiring of the individual involved. And whether that is something that I would own as a person. And I think when I look back and say, where was I in my career, having a young family and not doing enough. So for now, I think having a few more gray hairs, a little bit more established, thinking about things more holistically and understanding my responsibilities greater, I act very differently.
And you mentioned the course and just what you learned from it, but what specifically was the course that
it was a DEI course through Cornell, and it was predominantly online, and it was a serious investment of time, and it basically just highlighted the differences that we all are challenged with, understanding, accepting, and a deep dive into equity and inclusion and the variables within that, then understanding the differences, and then understanding how to be better at empowering individuals.
I think this goes for Peter. Just once you guys kind of had Gavin nailed down as the guy you were going to hire for this role, were any women that work in the club, any women involved in the decision-making process, and were women who work for the club, were they kind of consulted and asked for their opinions on a hire like this?
Well, I would only say that we have owners that are women. So were they consulted? This was a fast process, but I mean, it's part of the ownership group's vetting process, and that would be it.
Peter, what would you say to fans who would still have concerns over the hiring of Gavin?
I think, again, I mean, I think it's been said quite a few times. I think first and foremost, I think, I mean, I believe that through our process, that he has owned the areas in which that he feels that he could have done more. One, I also think that, as I said, Mike said, it's not said lightly. People deserve second chances. When they've recognized that maybe they've made a mistake in some area, I mean, we're done with those people. We do it every day in all kinds of things, and I think the other part of it, you also have to be willing to, in that process, you can keep a watchful eye, you can be very critical, but at the same time, you also have to give an opportunity to let the demonstrated performance winds up being over time. I think you have to wait and see that to happen.
Is there something Gavin said directly to you that made you feel good about this hiring?
One thing? No, I would say that it's an accumulation of all the different meetings that we've had with all of our candidates, and including him as well.
For both, just why do y'all believe that Gavin's second chance should be in Kansas City with Sporting?
Because we went through the process. You can answer your way and I'll answer my way. We went through a process. As Mike said, we used a nationally or internationally recognized recruiting firm that aggregated a large number of candidates, which he was a part of, and part of their process also is vetting those candidates out as well. And so at the end, once we got past the parts of the Thorns and the situations that happened in Portland, it was now based on the merits of being able to do the job. And we feel that he's going to be a good addition from that perspective.
For me, I think I'm looking at it from the other end, where this is an honor. I have nothing but respect for this club. I have nothing but respect for the leadership. And I know the process they went through for me to be in this position that I am now. And ultimately, I also knew that these questions would be of paramount importance. And I'm not avoiding them. I'm owning them. And do I deserve a second chance? That's not for me to decide. That's for me just to present who I am and what I believe in, and how I believe I can help this club. And, you know, as I've mentioned, I think all of us, there's a constant level of growth and reflection when you go through tough times, and the times are extremely tough. And I'm fortunate to have an incredible family. And I think, you know, there's a level of understanding once you've gone through this to maybe continue to persevere. And, you know, it's made me understand how important this role is, how important how large my responsibility is. And, you know, I'm going to do everything possible to represent Sporting KC in the best light possible on a regular basis.